It's a real pleasure to stand and contribute to this take note motion budget reply for the 2020-2021 Victorian budget. And Acting Speaker, as I've made a custom since being elected the member for Sandringham at the November 2018 election, before the budget arrives, I write on behalf of my community to the State's Treasurer with my own Sandringham District budget submission, and I undertook that work again this year. Acting Speaker, in my budget submission to the Treasurer, I used as an opportunity to engage with my community and to see what are the needs of the community that they need the Victorian State Government to contribute to and to help with, in terms of making our community a better place, making our community a more vibrant place, making our community a place that is welcoming for everyone and that sets us up with the infrastructure and the services that our community needs, not just for this generation, Acting Speaker, but for the next. And those are my guiding principles in putting together the Sandringham District's budget submission. Once again, Acting Speaker, these were my guiding principles this year when I wrote to the Treasurer on the 11th of May with the Sandringham District's budget submission. And I'd like to, Acting Speaker, run through some of the funding requests that I put to the Treasurer this year. In the area of education, I asked for the funds required to expedite the removal of portable classrooms from Sandringham Primary School during stage 1 of the school's rebuild. For those who aren't familiar, Acting Speaker, Sandringham Primary School tragically burnt down in a fire, or the majority of it burnt down in a fire only very recently. It's currently undergoing a rebuild, and as part of that rebuild there are portable classrooms built in as part of that rebuild. Now, my view is, and our community's view is, that if you're rebuilding a school, it shouldn't have portable classrooms. Portable classrooms, by their very definition, should be portable and should be temporary. And if you have the opportunity to rebuild a school, you should do so once, and you should do so well, and portable classrooms should not feature as part of the Sandringham Primary School rebuild. About $1.5 million for the repair and reconstruction of a school hall at Beaumaris Primary School, and I was pleased to meet with their school principals, school student leaders and school council representatives to speak about that important matter on site at Beaumaris Primary School before I put in this Sandringham District budget submission. $2 million for the construction of a school hall at Beaumaris North Primary School. Now, Mrs Duffy, the principal at Beaumaris North Primary School, has been advocating for a school hall for many years, and I remember only very recently, at the end of last year in fact, Acting Speaker, being invited to their Beaumaris North Primary School end-of-year school assembly, and it was a very hot day. It was a very hot day indeed, and they were all gathered, well, some were gathered, outside in the blistering heat, under a tin roof, and what they want is a new school hall. And they are, as I'm advised by the school principal, entitled to a new school hall, and they haven't got it. And they need it, and that's why, as their local member, I'm advocating for that new school hall. Stage 2 funding for the redevelopment of Sandringham Secondary College now. Acting Speaker, Sandringham Secondary College, a great school across 2 campuses, great teaching, great learning, great culture. But what we need at Sandringham Secondary College, Acting Speaker, is the school infrastructure to match the outstanding educational outcomes, the outstanding culture, the outstanding teaching and learning at that school. And it's unacceptable, Acting Speaker, for school buildings to be in a state of disrepair as they are at Sandringham Secondary College. It is absolutely unacceptable. And there's asbestos through that school. There is only so many times you can slap a coat of paint over rotting wood, and that's what Sandringham Secondary College community has been doing for a number of years now. They haven't had a cent of major infrastructure dollars in that school for many decades, and it's about time that that school was rebuilt, and that's why I'm asking for stage 2 funding for that redevelopment. And of course, Mentone Girls Secondary College, the only girls' single-sex school in the southern area of Melbourne that has not had similar to Sandringham Secondary College, a cent of major infrastructure dollars for decades, Acting Speaker. Now, you know, I, as the local member in this area, in the area where Mentone Girls Secondary College resides, am advocating for the best and the brightest educational opportunities for young girls. I think they deserve no less. I want to see those wonderfully gifted young women succeed. And I think that one way to help them and to acknowledge the huge effort, not only by the principal but by the teaching and support staff and indeed the students themselves, is to start the rebuild of Mentone Girls Secondary College. It was a commitment that I took to the 2018 election campaign. It is a commitment that I am committed to delivering, but it'd be great if the State Labor Government, Acting Speaker, stepped up to the plate and delivered $7.5 million for the refurbishment of that school. Sandringham Hospital on Bluff Road in Sandringham, Acting Speaker, isn't just a hospital, isn't just a community hospital. It's not just bricks and mortar on Bluff Road. It is the beating and caring heart of our community, Acting Speaker, as I've said many times before. It deserves to be upgraded. It deserves love. It deserves to be upgraded. It is not a country practice. It's not a regional hospital that should just merely be forgotten. Of course, it's part of the Alfred Health Network. It is a critical part of our local health infrastructure. It deserves to be upgraded. And once again, I'm advocating for that upgrading because it means so much to our community. I might note, Acting Speaker, a conflict at this point in time. I was born there, you know, a short 35 or so years ago, but that said, conflicts aside, it deserves to be upgraded and our community wants it to be upgraded, and I'll fight until it is upgraded. In relation to road safety, we need a new pedestrian crossing or some other sort of traffic safety intervention at the intersection of Childers Street and Warrigal Road in Mentone. That intersection is used by hundreds of children and hundreds of families on a busy school day. It is the gateway to Mentone Primary School, to St Patrick's Primary School, to Mentone Preschool and other local educational facilities. It's a really dangerous intersection. I've written to the Minister for Roads about this, not just to the Treasurer. Those requests have been met with silence at this point in time. It needs to be upgraded. I'll continue to fight until it's done. It's the right thing to do. And I'd invite, as the intersection itself is on Warrigal Road, the boundary between the Sandringham districts and the Mordialloc district, for the member for Mordialloc to be on a unity ticket with me on this matter because it affects some of his constituents as well. We should be for better safety for our kids and for our families, and that intersection desperately needs to be upgraded. Of course, the intersection of George Street and Bay Road needs to be upgraded, as well as the intersection of Tulip Street and Bluff Road in Blackrock. These are things that are not new to my communities. Those are intersections that I've been fighting for to be upgraded for some time, and I'll continue to do so until the right outcome is delivered for our community. Acting Speaker, in the community space, I advocated for the extension of Parks Victoria Rangers, responsible for patrolling marine sanctuaries, including arguably our area's greatest environmental and ecological asset, the Ricketts Point Marine Sanctuary. I've advocated for $400 million for the immediate restoration of the Beaumaris Bay Pier, $1 million for the immediate restoration and reopening of Hampton Pier. Now, Deputy Speaker, as you take the chair, Hampton Pier has now been closed for some 18 months, and it's unacceptable. It is a much-loved community asset, a much-used community asset, and it should be reopened. And it is one of a number of bay assets, piers and jetties around Port Phillip Bay and other bays, Western Port Bay especially, where they're either closed or partially closed, and they need to be restored, they need to be upgraded. I'll continue to fight for Hampton Pier to be restored. Deputy Speaker, I've advocated in my Sandringham District budget submission for the beautification of Department of Roads traffic light boxes across the Sandringham District. for the construction of female change room facilities at the Trevor Barker Oval, for the preservation of the vast majority of the gas and fuel land in Nepean Highway Hyatt for community use. Now, that's 6.3 hectares of land, Deputy Speaker, 6.3 hectares of land that is owned by the state government and that is earmarked for high-density, high-rise in Hyatt. My vision for that 6.3 hectares of land, in absolute contrast to the state Labor government's vision for that land, is for community recreational space, for parkland, for sporting facilities, for community use. I've advocated historically since around 2017 for the vast majority of that 6.3 hectares of land to be preserved for community use. It should be preserved for community use. That is the right outcome for our community, and that will set us up for future generations in terms of that parkland access, in terms of the sporting field access. It's important for the majority of that land to be reserved and preserved for our community. Deputy Speaker, in the transport space, I will continue to advocate for the removal of the Hyatt Road level crossing and for the Wickham Road level crossing in Hyatt. It's the right thing to do. Level crossings in and around that area along the Frankston line have been removed. I've historically advocated for the Warrigal Road level crossing to be removed. I understand that the government will be removing that crossing. They've announced a rail above road, a sky rail solution at Warrigal Road. The community doesn't want sky rail at Warrigal Road for that intersection to be removed. We want rail under road. That was made very clear. That's something that I committed to ahead of the 2018 state election. That's the right thing to do by the community, and it should be delivered a rail under road solution at Warrigal Road, similarly to Hyatt Road and Wickham Road in Hyatt. I've advocated for greater frequency of bus services throughout the district and additional PSOs at Mentone Railway Station from 3 p.m. Until 6 p.m, in addition to the regular PSO shifts to better protect the school students, the 5,000 or so school students that commute through Mentone Station on any given school day. So, Deputy Speaker, that was my Sandringham District budget submission, a précis of it for this year, sent to the Treasurer, and I received a response from the Treasurer to that budget submission on the 4th of July, just shy of 2 months after I initially put in that budget submission, where the Treasurer outlined a number of general things that may contribute to the Sandringham District in some esoteric way, but not in a direct way. And I note with some disappointment, Deputy Speaker, that the quite specific items that I raised for funding consideration in this year's state budget weren't in fact directly responded to by the Treasurer in his reply. This greatly disappoints me, Deputy Speaker, and I I know that it greatly disappoints the majority of my community, who I take great pride in working very closely with to advocate for their needs. The state Labor government, Deputy Speaker, says that it governs for all. And sadly, my experience, having made now 3 Sandringham District's budget submissions to the state Labor government and to the Treasurer, Tim Pallas, that's not apparent to me, and that's not apparent to my community, because there are some very specific things that I've outlined in my Sandringham District budget submissions which have not been responded to and which continue to not be responded to in a specific way. Deputy Speaker, the reason why I submit that Sandringham District budget submission every year is because I love my community. My community is a wonderful place to live and to work, to raise a family, and what I want for my community is to set it up for the next generation. There are a number of things that would make that a lot better and make our community a lot better for those future generations, and I'm bitterly disappointed that the state Labor government hasn't responded in a positive way to those suggestions raised. I'll encourage the state Labor government to consider specifically the request that I've made for future budget considerations, because I will not stop fighting until those items are delivered.